So, good evening to you all. I really resisted every way I could towards being the person giving the talk this evening. The organizing committee knows that. But what can I do? Here I am. They don't listen. So from that time to this, I really still have not really decided what we're going to talk about. Except I thought what I would like to talk about, although I don't know how I'm going to sustain it for 1.5 hours, is kindness. And just now, as I went back to my room to deal with some emails, I received an email from an American nun, young nun. She hasn't been ordained very long. But she had been due to be studying in a certain nunnery, not our nunnery, but a nunnery. And she had problems, and so she's left. And her email basically was about the unkindness, the cruelty of women to other women. And she said, I know you understand because you often say the problem for women is not the men, it's other women, which sometimes is true. I mean, one of the beautiful things about Sakadita is I think here it is not true. I think here we have a very sustaining energy among the women, not jealousy, not competitiveness, not being mean to each other, but really supporting and appreciating each other. But as I received that email this evening, it kind of endorsed that the one thing which we all have to come together to really appreciate and practice is kindness. Because we might not be great scholars, we might not know too much about the finest of Buddhist philosophy. We certainly may not be great meditation practitioners. And, basically most of us have quite ordinary sort of lives to lead. But the one thing, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, the one thing we can learn is to have a good heart. Because if we cannot manage that, then what use is all our intellectual knowledge and all the months and years of practice which we consider ourselves to have performed? What use? So I thought, okay, we will talk about the cultivation of a good heart, the cultivation of kindness in our daily lives. So, I should look at the time, because otherwise you might be here till midnight, or you might be finished in half an hour, depending. Why are there never any clocks in these rooms? Okay. So, of course, kindness indicates a heart which is open and warm towards all other beings. It's based on the idea that just as I would prefer to be quite happy and, have a sense of well-being and would rather avoid suffering and, unkindness, likewise, all beings wish for happiness and to be free of suffering. I mean, they might have very strange ideas of what happiness is, but nonetheless, genuinely, people would rather have a feeling of inner well-being than of suffering, depression, anxiety, and all these other feelings which are very unwelcome. So, based on that, the identity of ourselves and others, how I wish for happiness, so do everyone else, not just humans. I mean, one beauty in the Buddha Dharma is that it's not just humans we're talking about. It's all beings, all sentient beings, beings which have consciousness. All beings want to be, happy and to avoid suffering. And so, recognizing that in ourselves, we give that out to others. I mean, it's so simple. In principle, anybody can understand that. It's not deep philosophy, it's not some deep, realizations. I would rather feel well, wouldn't you? And so then the Buddha, of course, he taught on the Brahma Viharas of metta, maitri, of loving kindness and compassion, rejoicing in the happiness that we experience, and then the impartiality, that not just wishing happiness for those people we like and being indifferent or even negative towards people we don't like or who are not part of our team. So this is a very, very fundamental practice to open up our heart in all Buddhist schools. Because it's very easy if we are only practicing and then or studying to somehow cut ourselves off from all the beings around. Just as it is very easy to sit in meditation thinking, may all beings be well and happy. May all beings be well and happy. Oh, may all beings be well and happy. And then we go out and meet the beings. and so this is where other beings, everyone, is so helpful. Because, if we don't have other people helping us as mirrors to our own mental and emotional states, how will we ever know what is really going on in our hearts, isn't it? So that's obvious. So the Buddha, in his wisdom, said, we start where? We start with ourselves. So some people can be very, very kind to others, but they're really not kind to themselves. I mean, so often when people, in my, where I live in India, then in the afternoons I meet people. People come. And again, listening to them, you can see that often their main practice is that they really don't like themselves. That they're very nasty to themselves, actually, in a way that they would not be to others. I mean, some people are nasty to others and kind to themselves. Other people are kind to themselves and are nasty to themselves. I mean, so what we're trying to do is to equalize being kind both to ourselves and to others. So we have to start. The Buddha understood very clearly, we have to start from where we are. It doesn't mean that we're only thinking about ourselves and are very self-indulgent. Obviously not that. But we have to make peace with ourselves. People who get very angry, a lot of people come and say, oh, I get so angry, or I get so frustrated, and, I'm always in conflict with others. It's so often because they are in conflict with themselves. And they are not nice to themselves. The messages we give to ourselves are very critical. We are putting ourselves down. We're always emphasizing what's wrong, and we don't appreciate the goodness within ourselves. And of course we have to look at our faults and use our practice to try to transform our faults. But it's like if we have a garden, If we consider our heart-mind as a garden, then we cannot always be just pulling out weeds, only looking at the weeds and not noticing the beautiful flowers. I mean, what kind of gardener spends all their life fixated on weeds and doesn't notice that all the time there's beautiful flowers growing there, which need to be watered, which need to be fertilized and appreciated. And flowers grow in the sunshine. And so the flowers of our good qualities grow in the sunshine of our awareness and our appreciation. So also in the Buddha Dharma, along with loving kindness to ourselves and compassion, we also have to appreciate the goodness. Sometimes, especially in the West, people coming from a Judaic Christian background feel guilty about recognizing anything good in themselves. They feel completely at home with finding everything wrong. But as soon as you mention anything good, they are embarrassed. And they would never dream of saying to themselves, well done, for something which was well done. But in order for things to grow, they need to be appreciated. They need to be cultivated. So we not only work to overcome and transform the negative within us, but we also strive to encourage the goodness in us. We all have natural goodness, basic goodness. The good news is that we are all inherently completely okay. Our true nature is Buddha nature. We are not bad people. Inherently, we are absolutely fine. We've just got a little bit messed up along the way. But that can be removed because our negative emotions, like our greed and our grasping mind and our anger and aversion and irritation and our jealousy and our pride, underlying egoic clinging called ignorance, all of that is called, well, in English is called adventitious. And adventitious means it is not inherent. In other words, it's not part of our genuine nature. This is something which has been learned in accordance with the ego grasping at what is pleasurable and rejecting what seems to be painful. But these are learned responses from maybe countless lifetimes, but it's not part of our original nature. A part of our real nature is completely fine, no problem. And we have to remind ourselves of that no matter what problems we may have, inherently we're fine. And it's not like we have to, climb Mount Everest to discover it. It's always there within us. We just have to recognize what is inherent within us already. So we have to be kind first to ourselves, encourage ourselves, appreciate ourselves, recognize that whatever needs to be accomplished, we can accomplish. Recently, I met with this yogi called Lama Govind from Kinur. And he had spent many years meditating in icy caves, much worse than me. I mean, when they built him a little hut because the cave was open and all the snow would come in, he destroyed the hut and said Milarepa didn't live in huts. So he was a very austere guy. But he's great fun, actually. He's not austere at all. He's great fun. But somebody asked him, what was his life's lesson? What lesson had he learned from his life? And he thought, and he said, I'll tell you, wait. Oh, he has a long dreadlocks, and he just wears little shorts and a cotton thing, and he looks very wild. And he speaks excellent English. because before becoming a yogi, he had gone to college and has actually a master's in business. So it's like talking to Milarepa, suddenly he's speaking in English. I got a great shock when I first met him. But anyway, we asked him what was the main lesson he'd learned from life. And he, after a while, he said, okay, I got it. And he said, work hard and never give up hope. So that's the point. Yes, it's hard work sometimes, but we should never give up hope in our own potential. We should never despair of ourselves. We should always believe in our ability to accomplish if we're willing to put the work in. I mean, it's like if anybody wants to learn any skill, like they want to learn how to play an instrument, a piano. When we first sit down to play the piano, nobody sits down and plays a Beethoven sonata straight off. They don't. You can't. You start with scales, and your fingers hit all the wrong keys, and it sounds terrible. And if we say at that point, this shows I'm not musical, well, that's it. I'm not going to do it again. Then that's it. But if we say, well, this is a challenge, but other people can master this instrument, so I shall likewise practice and practice until finally I will be able to play. And so they do. Nobody learns a skill just like that. And what to speak of cultivating the qualities of our heart. It takes work. It takes determination. It takes patience. Why do we think that to learn any ordinary skill can take weeks, months, years of constant practice, but somehow I'm just going to sit down and immediately be able to recognize the nature of the mind? Naturally, I recognize anger is a problem, so from now on, I'm never going to be angry. Why do we talk about practice? Because it's something which we do again and again and again and again, over and over, day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute. We practice. Even my Lama Kamta Rinpoche, who really was a Buddha in person, although nowadays that's not fashionable to say. Nonetheless, he said to me one day, we are the same. We are just walking the path and practicing. And I said, yes, Rinpoche. Well, he's down there somewhere, I'm here, but, we're walking the path, we're practicing. And that's the point. So we should be kind to ourselves. Encourage ourselves, not pull ourselves down. That is not humility. Low self-esteem is considered as bad, if not worse, than over-esteem. In Buddhism, pride is not only thinking we're better than other people, but also thinking we're inferior or more or less the same. It's all the ego giving its own assessment of itself. And it doesn't help. So we should be fair to ourselves. Yes, we recognize our faults. Yes, we recognize what work needs to be done. But we also can encourage ourselves that whatever needs to be accomplished can be accomplished. So say nice things to yourself. Imagine if you were speaking to your best friend, what would you say? If we said to our best friends, or any friends, what we say to ourselves, we wouldn't have any friends. So why do we say to ourselves what we would never say to another, hopefully never say to another? Because we cannot get rid of ourselves, right? We have to take ourselves with us everywhere. I mean, some of you have traveled 36 hours to get here, but you still got yourself with you. You might leave behind all the rest of your family, but yourself you carry. So why not have a good friend? The basis of the word metta or maitri is friendship. And so we make friends. And to be a good friend, we encourage ourselves. We see the potential, despite the problems. So we start with ourselves. As the Buddha recommended, start making friends with ourselves, encourage ourselves, and even Shantideva, who was not a great fan of the ego, nonetheless said that although pride and arrogance are, of course, a mental affliction, nonetheless, self-confidence is essential. We have to believe we can do it. If we don't believe we're going to get somewhere, we won't get there. If we set out on a journey already telling ourselves we're bound to lose the way, and it's all going to be too difficult, and we're never going to make it, so why even bother? Then how far are we going to get on the journey? But if we think, well, you know, this is the journey, other people got there, why can't I? I've got my GPS out. Then whatever problems we may experience on the way, and many of you experienced lots of problems getting here. Really, a lot of problems some people had getting here. But they knew that if they determined, eventually they would arrive. And so they did. I mean, many of you had visa problems, other people had lots of problems with their ticketing, and all sorts of problems they had. Delayed, catching of planes, and all sorts of problems. But they got here. Why? Because you knew you could. And so it's like that on the spiritual journey. We have to encourage ourselves and believe in our own potential to accomplish. If we put in enough work, enough practice. Every moment is practice. So then, kindness. Kindness to people we care about. The Buddha said, he made it, in step. So next level of our kindness are people that we care about. Our family, our work colleagues, our friends, people we like. One would expect that it would be quite easy to be kind to people to whom we are close. But often for many people, that is more of a challenge than being kind to strangers. Many people in their home life are not kind to their partners, their children, their parents, their work colleagues. We take them for granted. Sometimes people almost don't see them anymore because they're so familiar, and they forget that they are people. People also needing love. In a sangha, in the monastic sangha, you are all sisters to each other. And it's very important not to take each other for granted and not to be too partisan. I mean, a lot of the Vinaya is concerned with how to create harmony in society and in the monastic society in particular. A lot of the rules basically are just on how to stay harmonious and not to get divisive. And so likewise in our families, in our workplace, how to bring people together and not to be divisive. Divisiveness is one of the precepts in speech, wrong speech. One of the precepts is not to be divisive. Divisive means saying something to someone else which will cause them to have doubts about the other person, or cause them not to like them. Oh, you know, she said about you, da 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 da. And then you feel awkward when you meet that person again. That kind of speech is very negative. So rather than cause people to split, we should make efforts to bring people together. It's so easy, really. When we recognize that all the beings that we meet want happiness and not suffering, then we can use our daily life as our practice, the practice of kindness. Sometimes people say, oh, I'm so busy, I have no time to practice. What? What do we think practice is? I mean, some people in Asia and also in the West imagine that practice is when we go to the Dharma center or the temple, when we're praying, when we're meditating, when we're studying Dharma books, when we're listening to a talk. That's Dharma practice. Rest of the day, with our family, with our work, with our social life, that's just worldly activity. But if we think like that, then we will never accomplish much. We will never really make much progress, because the time that we spend in official Dharma environment is so small compared with the time that we are spending out with other beings. So other beings, everyone we meet, is our practice. It's obvious. Every single being we meet is vulnerable to the opinions and reception of others. Even people that we think are very accomplished, inwardly are still very vulnerable. So we should never say or do anything which causes discomfort to others and makes others feel, hurt. We should not hurt others. We should be kind. It's so obvious. So the Buddha said, start with people we know, people we like, people that we have a bond with, thinking how to make that person happy. So all of you, when you go home, your family and your work colleagues, how to make them happy. Don't take them for granted. Look at them as though we had never seen them before. Really look. Listen as if we'd never heard them before. And send them genuine wish for their happiness and well-being. Smile. I mean, it's so easy to be kind, especially to people who are kind back, right? It's easy to be loving to people who are lovable. And that's a start. That's a start. We can be nice to people who we assume will be nice back. I mean, here at the conference, everybody you smile at smiles back, right? Isn't that nice? If only the world were like Sakidita. Everybody's smiling, everybody's hugging each other, everybody is being friendly to each other. I hope it's from the heart. But it certainly is, people go around looking happy because they're surrounded by people who wish them well. So, we can do some practice while we're in Sakidita, right? Sakidita, we're all going to be appreciative of each other, respectful to each other. It's not just the monks and nuns who need respect. All beings need respect because all beings have Buddha nature. So therefore, we should respect that in all beings And recognizing that despite having Buddha nature, we are nonetheless very identified with a very fragile and vulnerable sense of self, we should be kind. So, practice on people first that we like. It's very easy to do. We can easily be kind to people who are nice. But then the Buddha said, also practice on neutral people. People who normally we never think, are they happy or not happy? They're just people. And we don't even think about that. And yet the Buddha said that one time the Buddha was, the king was sitting on his balcony, and he said to his queen, you know, I've been thinking about it, and I think that the person I love most in all the world is myself. What do you think, dear? And so she thought about it, and then she said, yes, you're right. The person I love most is me, which I don't think the king was hoping for. But anyway, they went to the Buddha with this, and the Buddha said, yes, to each one, their own self is most dear, is most precious. Therefore, we should always be kind and never hurt other beings. Because it doesn't matter how high or low they might be in the worldly estimate, each being is the center of their own universe. As long as we are in the grip of our deluded minds, the universe revolves around each one of us. Me, 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 me. My thoughts, my ideas, my memories, my opinion, my beliefs, my likes, my dislikes. You listen. It's all me, 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 me. So, given that, we should be kind. And so people who are never we gave a thought to whether they're happy or not, they're just people out there, to recognize that each one is most precious to themselves. And they have family. They have their own life. They have their own circle. They have problems. I mean, if one is on, riding in a plane, for example, or on a bus, or caught in a traffic jam, to recognize that all the beings here, in the plane, for example, or here, all of them wish for happiness, and all of them are suffering. Everyone has problems. Everyone has unfulfilled desires and wishes, and everyone would like to feel good and probably doesn't. Just as we have problems and difficulties and would rather be happy than to be sad, every single being has the same wish. And so they're not just anonymous blobs out there. Each one is a being with feelings, hopes, fears, challenges, a whole history behind them, a whole life history. So even like, for example, one could be riding in a plane or a bus and, instead of watching a movie or whatever, why not do Tonglen? Or if you don't know what Tonglen is, radiate golden light from the heart and imagine it filling the whole plane. And all the beings are soaked in this golden light of loving kindness and happiness. And the wish, may all the beings here be filled with happiness, and may they be free from their sufferings. And that aspiration, just the aspiration that all these beings is a recognition that each of these beings is most precious to themselves, and that they deserve happiness. And we would be so happy if they were happy. Wouldn't that be wonderful? If all beings could be happy and free from suffering? I mean, truly, wouldn't we wish that? So anywhere that we go, we can always see that whoever we're talking to, a shop assistant or, air stewardesses or anybody, anywhere that we meet, we can think, may you be well and happy. Because that's what they would like. And so we wish that also for them. And we can be kind. We can smile. We can be polite. This in itself is a practice. It's a practice also of mindfulness, of awareness of others, not always trapped in our own preoccupations, our mind whirling around me. But the sensitivity to open up, to recognize that each being that we meet wishes for happiness, and to wish that. Even if we don't speak the same language, the language of genuine love has no linguistic barriers. I mean, I meet many of these nuns here, they don't speak a word of English. Who cares? I know that they're wishing well, and I wish them well, and that's an incredible communication. Don't need language. Like animals, also. Animals also want to be happy. They don't want to be miserable. Just recently, we have this street dog at our nunnery called Sangmo. And she came in because she had cervical cancer, and so she was in a horrible state, and very skinny and in a horrible. She came in order to die. I mean, we'd never seen her before. She just came in, but clearly she thought she was going to die. However, she had the karma to meet with Catherine, the vet, who is Aussie. And she's going to be a program here, actually, I think. And she gave 2 rounds of chemo to the dog. And she's still with us 10 years or more later. She's still, she's... But recently, in our nunnery, the nuns, after their exams, they have a holiday. And so a whole group, I was looking out and saw in the morning, early morning, this whole group of nuns with backpacks were going off. They were going home to Kinora or Lahul. And Zangmo was following behind them, and her tail was right down, her head was right down, and she was crying. I never heard her cry before. She was so upset that the nuns were all leaving. And she loves the nuns. She's a funny old dog. If she wants to be petted, she'll put a paw up and tap you. Otherwise, don't touch her. But she loves the nuns, and she always stays outside the temple door when they're doing pujas, and she was just so sad. So animals also have great feelings of love, great feelings of concern, great feelings of empathy. So may all beings be well and happy. Isn't it? So when people are nice to us, it's very easy to be nice back. For example, here, you know that if you smile, everybody will smile back at you. And, everybody here is open to everybody else and is willing to be friendly. So what do we do when people are not friendly? You smile at some, maybe, in your, where you come from, in your cities, etc. If you smile at somebody, they will be very alarmed. That's a sad comment on our present society. This is not true in India. On the whole, in India, if you smile at people, they smile back. Namaste, namaste. Okay. But there is also a lot of teachings on how to take difficult people onto the path. So, of course, it's easy to be kind and friendly towards people who are kind and friendly back. But also there is a lot of teaching on how to deal with situations and people who are not friendly, who maybe even wish us ill. These teachings were especially introduced into the Tibetan system in the 11th century. Of course, they're inherent in Buddhism. It's no new thing coming up. But they especially were given great emphasis during the coming to Tibet of the great Bengali scholar Atisha, Dipankara Atisha. He brought into Tibet, recognizing the situation that he encountered in Tibet at that time, all these teachings on how to take problems and difficulties and difficult people onto the path. And instead of considering that obstacles and problems that we encounter in our life are an obstacle, we can recognize that actually this is a great opportunity to practice. And so there are many texts, very famous nowadays, even in the West, because many of them have been translated with the commentaries into English and other languages. But these are dealing with how to deal with difficulties, including difficult people. And there are many, many different ways of approaching this, and I'm not going into a teaching on this particular method. But one thought is that one of the qualities needed to the attainment of Buddhahood is the quality of tolerance or patience and forbearance. That this quality of being able, this khanti or kshanti, needs to be developed. It's part of our training. And we cannot develop patience if we do not have somebody who annoys and upsets us. So, I mean, as I said before, it's very easy to be friendly and loving to people who are friendly and loving. Doesn't require too much. But what we need is to learn how to maintain that equanimity of mind and friendliness of mind towards people who are very, very difficult for us. How are we to learn patience if we do not have somebody who pushes our buttons? So, instead of resenting someone who is rude or difficult, we can regard them instead as our teacher of patience. So in the text, it even recommends that the person who is so difficult to us, we should place them on our head as a symbol of our respect for this person. Thank you so much. You're so obnoxious. Without you, how could I develop patience? I'm so grateful you're horrible. So a bit like this, you know. One time I was at the, for me, my main practice for patients is the foreign registration office at the police in Dharamshala. I always go in and think, this is my Lojong practice for the day. One time I was there, and in front of me, this is where you go to renew your visas and so forth. And I mean, sometimes the guys, I mean, I feel sorry for them because they also have all these people who are very tense and, you know, they need a visa and then there's reasons why they can't get visas and then they're very, you know, everybody's tense there. And having to deal with that day after day after day must be very difficult for the poor officers. But anyway, whatever. One time I went there and there in front of me in the queue was this Western monk, tall Western monk. And so the visas, you know, there are several pages that you have to fill out, you know, 3 or 4 pages. And the officer said to him, "You filled that out wrong." And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, give it to me, I'll correct it." "No, do it again." And he took the pages and he just tore them into pieces, threw them at the monk. So the monk said, "Oh, thank you, so please could you give me some new forms?" So he, and the monk said, "Thank you," turned around, looked at me, and grinned and winked. Yay! And the result of that was not only that the monk did a quantum leap in learning about forbearance and patience, but also the officer was very nice to me. I mean, if the monk had been all uptight and angry back, then the officer would have been more angry and then it would have escalated. But because the monk just absorbed it and just let it go, there was no problem. Of course, this does not mean that if in the face of people abusing us wrongfully or cheating us and so forth, that we have to allow it, because also, apart from anything else, this is helping them create bad karma. But even if we stand up for ourselves, we should do it not from the center of anger and retaliation, but from a genuine sense of compassion. Because when people are not nice to other people, it's because inwardly they're not happy. They might think they're happy, but they're not. Anyone who is genuinely at peace within themselves normally would never think of creating problems for others. Why would they? So rather than getting all upset and angry, if we can summon up the armor of our patience, forbearance, and compassion, even if we stand up for ourselves and, you know, try to deal with the situation, if we have a mind frame of patience and compassion, we are much more likely to be in tune with our inherent wisdom and act skillfully. If we are under the control of anger and a desire for retaliation, then our responses will be distorted and just create more problems, as well as making negative karma on all sides. So this quality of being able to take even negative situations and transform them into our learning path is very, very important. And also for difficulties which come in our life, including sickness and loss and the many problems which everyone has to face. To recognize, what can I learn from this? What is this teaching me? How can I use this on the path? It's very important. If we only think we can practice when everything is going well, and as soon as things become difficult, we fall apart, then that shows that we haven't really understood the practice. So we need to cultivate that inner strength, that whatever happens, somehow we can deal with it. We can deal with it with kindness. Then there are difficult people. As I was saying, difficult people are also a great helper on the path. That this is how we cultivate our practice. Not just by always having things running smoothly and nicely, That's very nice, and the result, no doubt, of auspicious karma. But in itself, it doesn't necessarily teach us much, because we can all be very sweet and nice when things go right. The measure of our understanding is when things go all wrong. Wrong, at least in accordance with our ego perception. It's not what I want. Kindness also means appreciation. Appreciating all the goodness in our lives. Sometimes we get into the habit of just looking at all that's wrong and not appreciating all that is right, all that is going as it should. Appreciating others, appreciating the goodness in others. So we can spend our day appreciating. Here, appreciating, as they said yesterday, the clear air, if you lived in Delhi, I don't know, Delhi is the most polluted country in the world now. That's the most polluted city. I mean, really, it's a fog, and people live in that. Children are brought up in that. They hardly ever see the sky as a clear blue sky. So we can appreciate. When we are in an environment where everything is good, then we are happy that it's good. When we are in an environment where there are challenges, then we can think for ourselves how to deal with these challenges, because things should not always go right. Many of you know, when I left my retreat in Lahul, I went to South India and on pilgrimage with a friend of mine, two friends. And he wanted to go to visit some famous astrologer. There are some very famous astrologers in South India. So he went to consult this astrologer, and then I thought, well, while we're there, so I said, okay, can you give me advice? Either I can go back into retreat, or I can start a nunnery. What should I do? And then he looked, and then he said, well, if you go back into retreat, very smooth, very peaceful, very pleasant. If you start a nunnery, many problems, many difficulties, many challenges, but both are good, so you choose. So then I thought, oh, right, well, back in retreat, right? And then I mentioned this to a Catholic priest, and he said, well, it's obvious. You start the nunnery. He said, we are like pieces of rough wood. And if we always stroke ourselves with silk or velvet, that's very nice, but it doesn't make us smooth. In order to be smooth, we need sandpaper. Now, of course, a life with only sandpaper would rub us pretty raw, but nonetheless, it's true. We need sandpaper to make us smooth. And so while we don't need to go out looking for problems, problems will come, just sit there. Nonetheless, when problems do come, rather than rejecting that, we can think, how can this make me smooth? What can I learn from this? What is this here to teach me? And therefore to be kind also to problems. Not reject them. Be kind. What are you here to teach me? What can I learn now? What lesson is being presented to me at this moment? So how are we kind during our day? Well, they're very simple things. Kindness to others implies that we are conscious of others and others' needs, and not absorbed in just me, me, me. So, many people during the day are going to meet with many other people. Just be conscious. Is there something in this situation where one could be helpful? Some people are very helpful. They're always helping, helping, helping. Others are very indifferent. But it seems to me that the people who really enjoy helping others are the ones who themselves are often most filled with joy. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, and of course quoting Shantideva, that if we are only thinking of our own happiness, then we are likely to be very frustrated and dissatisfied. But if we are thinking mostly of the happiness of others, then we suddenly recognize that actually we feel good. That we feel a genuine joy within ourselves, not based on mere external pleasures. It's an inner rippling of joy within, which comes from genuinely wishing for the happiness and well-being of others, and how to bring that about for others. I mean, I see it also just with our nuns. We have, a very small nunnery, it's only about 100 or so nuns, but I can see, even with them, those who are always looking for how to be helpful. It's always the same ones, basically. They're there, they see something to be done, they run to do it. And others, equally very nice, but they don't think. If you tell them, do this, then they will do it. Well, look, sweep up the leaves. They will go and sweep up the leaves. But they won't see that leaves until you tell them. And others are just there immediately. Oh, these leaves need to be cleaned up, and off they go. So it's like that. And it seems to me that the ones who are the most willing to go forward and see needs of others when other nuns are sick, or when anything it needs to be done, or whatever is happening, the ones who most quickly go forward to be of help are the ones also who most go around with smiles on their faces, because they have this inner joy which pours over to wanting to be of help for others. But it also depends, as we said, on first becoming friendly with ourselves, because some people give out, give out, give out, and never give back. They feel guilty about giving to themselves. They only think we have to give to others. And so that is like having, a laptop, which we're always using, but we never recharge it. Then the battery goes flat. Or like this glass, if I fill it with water, then I can give it out. But then it gets empty. So in order to give out to others, I have to keep replenishing. And I think this is also why the Buddha said, you have to start with yourself. So we have to keep recharging our own batteries. We have to replenish in order to give out. We don't spend all our time recharging. I mean, we are recharging for a reason, in order to make use of the apparatus. But unless we remember that that apparatus does need recharging, we're going to have flat batteries. So a lot of people in the helping professions give and give and give. And in the end, they just burn out. Because we cannot give and give and give unless we are also replenishing. So therefore, it's very important. We have to take care of ourselves in order to take care of others. If we ignore ourselves, if we don't take any care, then eventually it's all going to fall apart. We're just going to get worn out, discouraged, disillusioned, helpless. That doesn't help anybody. So it's very important to start with giving kindness first to ourselves, and from that, naturally, towards all other beings. Smile, be friendly. When you go to a shop, even a supermarket, smile at the person taking your money. If you're in a taxi, ask the taxi driver, is this your local town? Where are you from? Where's your family from? They love talking. Have you ever noticed? Taxi drivers will tell you the whole philosophy of life. And sometimes it's a good philosophy, you know? I mean, I was at the taxi the other day in Sydney, and the guy was going on about how every day was a learning lesson. Everybody he met was his opportunity to develop more, and so on. On and on he was going. It was like, you know, a mind training lesson. Sweet guy. You know, if you ask them, you know, they will tell you. They're people. They have their hopes, their fears, their families, their problems, their joys, their whole history. They're not, you know, one of the problems in modern society is that more and more we're dealing with machines. We're not dealing with people. But we need to deal with people. Each one of us is a very sensitive being who, like a flower, when it is cold and frosty, it closes up. When the sun comes out, it opens up. So each one of us responds to kindness, appreciation. You know, I mean, you go into a shop and the assistant has maybe a nice hairstyle or is wearing something nice. Say so. Well, that's very nice. You look very pretty. That's a nice hairstyle. Oh, thank you. I mean, half a minute and you've probably made their day. Why not? Because it also means that we are conscious of other beings and their needs and their happiness, not just always focus on ourselves. So it's very simple to be kind. It doesn't take any great, you know, philosophical depths just to say hello, just to smile, isn't it? You know? I mean, as I say, here it's easy. But when we're out in society, also to remember that every single person is most important to themselves. And to honor that, because all of us have the potential for Buddhahood. And meantime, we are all trapped in samsara. We're all trapped in the prison house of samsara. Some people are in the penthouse suites. Some people are in the dungeons. Most are in between. But we're all imprisoned in samsara. And samsara, by its very nature, is difficult. So to have the empathy to recognize that if someone is irritable, who knows what they're going through right now? Who knows what problems they're facing? Children, parents, job, finances. Once you get talking to people, everyone comes up with all their problems, their difficulties, their difficult life, their difficult childhood, their fears for the future, their anxieties. We don't need to get involved in all of that, but we can be kind. We can smile. We can appreciate their humanness. So I really feel, I mean, I'm saying this also because I've heard a number of people observe how when they go to Dharma centers, people are so not kind. And they are quite shocked because they assume that naturally in a Dharma center, people will be kind. And often they are not. Many of the complaints I get are from people living in Dharma centers or who have been trying to go to Dharma centers, and they are really quite disillusioned. And one asks why. The Buddha Dharma is all about loving kindness, compassion, empathy, generosity, patience. How is it? There's nothing in the Buddha Dharma which says it's okay to be unkind. Nowhere. Everywhere you read, any lineage, any tradition, it's all about loving kindness to all sentient beings, not being partial just to those we like and indifferent or hostile to those we don't like or don't know. Being kind to all beings. May all beings be well and happy. May all beings be free from suffering. There's nowhere that it says we only have to deal with our group and to hell with the rest. Or that it's okay. We just support our lot and we can harm others because they're not part of our group. Never ever does it say that. You know, where we had a time before, a few years ago, one of our teachers went off to these remote areas of the Himalayas like Zanskar and Pangi and elsewhere. And to my great shock and horror, he came back with a busload of 26 little girls. They got off the bus like this. And truly, I was in shock. And my first thought was to send them all back, but you couldn't because they were from very remote areas. So anyway, they were still with us, all of them, and lovely little nuns, really very, very sweet, very precious. But anyway, only a few weeks later, somebody said to one of the little girls, who was now a little nun, "Oh, isn't it nice that you're here because now you can pray for your mummy and daddy and all your family?" And the little girl said, "Here, we pray for all sentient beings." So, if a little girl, 6 years old, can get the message, why do not we? Why? Even one very high Lama said to me one time, and I mean, he would get red carpet treatment wherever he went, very famous Lama. He said to me, why is it that ordinary people that you meet in the street who have no particular religious inclinations are often so much nicer and kinder than people you meet in Dharma centers? I mean, from a Lama. So why? Why are we not kind to each other? And then to all beings. There's nothing in the Dharma which says we should not be kind. There's nothing in the Dharma which says it's okay to be mean, to be unfriendly. We all like it when, I mean, like considering a Dharma center, if you go to a Dharma center or to a nunnery, you wander in, you don't know anybody, you feel very shy and, awkward. And then someone comes up and smiles and says, "Hello, can I help you?" Oh, this is a wonderful place. But if everybody ignores you and just talks with themselves, with each other, because they're all friends and they don't know you, who are you, then you feel, oh, what an unfriendly, nasty, I don't like this place. It's so simple. This is what I'm saying. I mean, it's not that you have to go out and do heroic deeds. You can just smile and say hello. Isn't it? It's not expecting anything too much to be friendly. and to think of how you would feel if you were that person. What would you like people to say and do to you? Well, you'd like people to smile and be friendly. That's all. I say to my nuns, look, even if you don't have much confidence in speaking English, whenever you see anybody wandering around the nunnery, smile. That's all they want. And everybody said, oh, your nuns are so friendly. But actually, all they're doing is smiling. I mean, some who know English get more friendly, but I mean, basically, we're human beings, are the only animals who smile to show pleasure. Most animals, if they show their teeth, it's aggression. Even monkeys. And they did this experiment on babies, blind babies, because they figured maybe human babies learn quickly, because when people look at a baby, they smile, right? So then baby learns to smile. So they tried on blind babies who had been blind from birth and couldn't see people smiling. And they saw that when the baby felt pleasure, it smiled. So this is a human thing. Only humans smile. Dogs, cats, if they show their teeth, they're not being friendly. But humans are. They smile. That's all you need to do. It's not like, any big deal. Just be nice. As the Dalai Lama said, really develop a good heart. A good heart means wishing well to all beings, especially other human beings. And recently another very high Lama, he said, what's the deal? People say they have no time to practice. Your whole life is your practice. We're trying to be good human beings. That's all we're trying, is to be good human beings. Can't we even manage that? So, in general, that's what we're trying to do. With people that we know and we love, people that we don't have any feelings about, who we're very neutral towards, and people who are very difficult for us. May all beings be well and happy. And it's so easy to help them to be happy, just by being kind. So this is nothing you haven't heard 1,000 times before. It's just a reminder that, however much practice, how much formal practice we do every day, however many retreats we've had, however many empowerments we've had, however many texts we've studied and memorized, none of that counts if we don't have a good heart. Benevolence, kindness. So, I really don't have anything more to say on that subject, except that each one of us can look on our daily life as our practice. This is the important thing, to recognize that it's not, as I said at the beginning, it's not just when we're doing so-called Dharma activities that this is practice and the rest of the day is just waste of time. Every moment, if we are aware and if our heart is open, it's a practice. What do we think practice is? So everybody we meet is our practice. So moment to moment, either we are conscious and aware, or we are not. And either we are kind, or we are not. Very simple. So in this way, everything we do in our daily life becomes our Dharma practice. We don't have to study for years and years and years to understand that we need to become more mindful, more aware, and we need to open up our heart to include all beings, wishing for their happiness. Every being we see, I mean, wherever we go nowadays, the cities are so crowded, the trains and buses are so crowded, filled with all these beings. Every single one wants happiness, and most of them have problems. May all beings be well and happy. May all beings be free from suffering. Really. But start also with yourself. Okay, thank you.